Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On Mets is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Mets. Now, on today's show, we're continuing my series of the top 10 biggest disappointments of the 2021 season, with Dominic Smith coming in at number 8. And the more I did research on this one, the more I thought I might have had him a little bit too low on this list. In the first segment, I'll talk about Dom's career up to this season, why everything had been laid before him to finally be a starter wire to wire. In the second segment, I'll talk about how that did not pan out and why he has been such a big disappointment this year, particularly in the power department. And then lastly, in the final segment, I'll tie JD Davis into this conversation as well. These two guys continue to be square pegs trying to fit him into round holes. They don't have a defensive position on this team, and they're not producing enough offensively to warrant that lack of a position. What should the Mets do moving forward? We will discuss that in a bit. But before we get to any of that, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing about the Mets and about baseball at justbaseball.com. So the more I look at this, the more it disappoints me, because I went into this year completely sold on Dominic Smith. After last season, I actually made an argument at one point that because Dom is a better, or was a better contact hitter who started to show that pop, I was making an argument that long-term for their careers, Dominic Smith or Pete Alonso, I thought Dom had a higher floor as a first baseman because you still believed he was the better defensive player. And what he did in 2019 and 2020, there was so many signs that this guy had finally broke out and finally become what he was supposed to be when he was a top prospect in baseball and one of the Mets' top prospects. And you go through his career, and it has not been smooth sailing. It took a lot for him to get to that point where he had that perception among people that evaluated the team. And it's just fallen off a cliff this year. But to go through his career, you may remember Dom made his debut in 2017 at a time when the Mets were terrible. From 2017 to 2018, he'd be up and down. The Mets continuing to give him opportunities. At the time, Pete Alonso couldn't buy that shot with the previous regime. Brody Van Wagenen comes in heading into 2019 and basically clears the door for Pete to be the opening day first baseman. Dom was getting dangerously close, I should say, to becoming a failed prospect, to becoming someone like an Ike Davis that was just let go because, they didn't pan out and you try to change the scenery and who knows what would have happened. Well, 2019 comes into spring training, looks slim, had lost a lot of weight, had gotten a CPAP machine so that he could deal with his sleep apnea. So he was getting better rest, talked about how the ball was coming in like grapefruits, could see everything better. And we thought that was it, right? We really did think that Dominic Smith had figured it out, that between getting better rest, between losing the weight, that he had become a hitter that you could count on because he was so good in 2019. The first half of that season, he hit 304 with a 389 on base and a 551 slugging percentage. He started the year coming off the bench, Pete's backup first baseman, coming in late for defensive reasons, getting those pinch hitting opportunities as a lefty bat at the bench, and just continue to earn playing time. Won a starting job that season in left field at the end of that first half of the year when the Mets needed offense, comes out of the break, starts off with a little bit of a slump for that first week, and then he breaks his foot. And that opened the door for JD Davis to be the starting left fielder. And then JD basically moved ahead of him on the depth chart, although Dom did have one last moment in 2019 in the final game of the season where he gets back off the IL for that last game and hits a walk-off 3-run homer coming off the bench. A great moment for Dom. Leads into the 2021 or 2020 season. And again, JD had passed him on the depth chart. He was going to be the starting left fielder. They quickly did abandon that during the year, moved JD to third base. But with JD and Yoenis Cespedes back in the lineup at the start of the 2020 campaign, there was no playing time for Dom. Then Cess opts out. that opens the door up for Dom at DH and eventually in left field. And he was awesome. In a 50-game sample, Dom hit 316, 377 on base, 616 slugging percentage, had 10 home runs, 21 doubles, and a triple. That's 32 extra base hits in 50 games. His WRC plus of 166 was tied with Jose Ramirez for the 5th best mark in baseball. And again, for those of you who are unaware, WRC plus is weighted runs created plus, which measures hitters based on a league average of 100. So at 166, Dom was elite. This year, I think this stat says it all. I tweeted it out just a little bit ago. Dominic Smith right now has 29 extra base hits in over 480 plate appearances compared to 32 extra base hits and 199 plate appearances in 2020. The power has left him entirely, and that has put him in a really bad spot when it comes to his future at the Mets. What do you do with Dominic Smith, but also what happened that led us to this point? We will discuss that in just a minute, but I want to tell you, Mets fans, about an incredible app for everyone that buys gas. You need to know about this. It's called Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. All you have to do is download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use the promo code BASEBALL to get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Again, just download the app for free and use that promo code BASEBALL to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back. There is no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download that free Get Upside app and use the promo code BASEBALL to get 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. So I don't want to make it seem like Dominic Smith has just been bad all year long. He's had some good stretches, particularly in July, where he posted an 823 OPS and hit 5 home runs. But overall, it's just been a dreadful offensive season for Dom. And there's really very few explanations for what happened last year to this year that would cause this decline. It's not like he came into camp out of shape or anything like that. He came in seeming to be in just as good shape, the same player, someone who had worked his ass off at being better out in left field. Early results of that were pretty good, but now you look up and it's just been a really tough season. And you look at his slash line and it pretty much says all you need to know. He hit 243 or he's hitting 243. Keep acting like the season's over because it is, but technically there's still more games going on. But right now hitting 243, 304 on base, 360 slugging percentage is the worst slugging percentage of his career. We're talking about worse than 27 and 2018, where he was not a good player for the Mets. So that is an alarming stat. His WRC plus is 86. You look at the strikeout and the walk rates. I mean, they haven't moved that much from where they were last year, but there's been no pop. You look at his isolated power, his ISO, that dropped from 299 in 2020 to 117 this year. You go to his MLB percentile rankings at Baseball Savant. His chase rate, he's in the 11th percentile. Whiff rate, 31st percentile. Barrel percentage, 29th percentile. Average exit velocity, hard hit percentage, expected slugging, all below the 50th percentile. So basically, he's chasing pitches more than ever. He's missing more than ever. And he's not barreling up balls the same way he has in the past. So he's not hitting balls as hard. So you look at that combination, you are, one, not showing good discipline, swinging at things outside of the zone. Two, you're not catching those pitches. You're swinging outside of the zone. You're not barreling up as many pitches. All of that's going to come together for him to have no power. And when Dominic Smith isn't hitting with any power, if he's not getting on base at an elite clip, he's just not a productive offensive player. That on base percentage of 304, it's just not good enough. If Dom was at least drawing a lot of walks, if he was at least giving you a good at bat, well, you could say, all right, you can deal with a little bit of that lack of power because Dom has shown to be a good contact hitter in the past. But this year, he just hasn't checked any of those boxes. And then you look at all of that, then you try to swallow his -9 outs above average. as one of the worst defenders in baseball based on that metric where he's in the bottom 2 percentile. It just doesn't work. It does not work moving forward to go into next year and say, all right, we're going to run Dom out there in left field for 120 games. You can't do that. And Pete Alonso had a very consistent season. Yes. Was there slumps? Was there peaks and valleys? Absolutely. But you look up at the final numbers and they're all there. The home runs are there. The general power is there. The average is there. The on-base percentage is there. Defensively, year over year, he improves. He's your franchise first baseman. That conversation is sealed if it wasn't sealed in 2019. Now it's over with. Pete Alonso is the guy moving forward. What do you do with Dominic Smith? What do you do with JD Davis, who actually had a somewhat good offensive season, although those numbers can be a bit deceiving? We'll get into that. But what do you do with these two guys moving forward? It's the same conversation we've been having for the last 3 years, and I'll have it again in just a minute. All eyes are on the gridiron for another football season, and as always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With the new updated site and interface, there's now even more odds, props, and contests available at betonline.ag, which continues to be your number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 100% welcome bonus with the promo code NFL100. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up. From football, basketball, baseball, and boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. One reason to repair and maintain your cars is to save money. Why would you choose to then spend 30%, 50%, maybe even 100% more for the exact same auto parts at a chain store or new car dealership when you can just go to rockauto.com? A family business that's been serving auto parts to customers online for 20 years. They have everything you can want, from engine control modules to brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks and have it delivered directly to your door. The rockauto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle, then choose the brand specifications and prices you prefer. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right locked on in there. How'd you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you. Amazing selection. Reliably low prices. All the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. So if you look at JD Davis's numbers on the surface, you might be able to make an argument that he hasn't had a bad year. Hit 285 so far, 384 on base, 436 slugging, 130 WRC plus. Very good across the board, right? The more you look at it, though, he is not the same player he was in 2019. And I think part of that is no juice baseball. The home runs just have not been there. 5 and over 200 plate appearances. His isolated power is down from 2019 when it was over 200. This year, it's at 151. And then you look at his strikeout rate of 32.2%. That's the worst mark of his career, even dating back to his rookie year with the Astros, where he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. I mean, this is a clear regression in some respects from what we saw in 2019. He has not been a consistent offensive performer in his career. That's why the Astros gave up on him. In 2020, he didn't have a good season. Not a terrible one, but not a good one. And he's basically done the same thing this year in a very similar sample size. The 1-year aberration in 2019, that to me is not indicative of the player he is and the player that won over so many Mets fans. And then you look at his BABIP this year, which is batting average on balls put in play. It's 426. That is not sustainable. He does hit the ball hard. That will lead to a higher BABIP than other players. And again, that's because the balls that he puts in play are hit harder. So they're going to find some more holes, and he might get on base a little bit more than others, but not at a 426 clip. That is very deceiving. And that makes me think that there is even room for more regression next year. You look at his WAR this year, and again, you'd be like, all right, pretty solid season. His WAR, according to Fangraphs, is 1.5. You compare that to 2019, and you look at the difference in playing time, and there would be an argument just based on WAR that he's been better this year than he was in 2019, but we know that's not the case, because part of why his WAR is better this year than it was that year is because his WAR that year was so adversely affected by his defense. And this year, he has become basically a pinch hitter. In September, JD Davis up to this point only has 5 starts. And I think that tells you where the Mets see him moving forward, because they desperately needed to win those games at the beginning of September. And it was Jonathan VR that was getting playing time over JD Davis. And not just because of the glove, because of the bat as well. So you look at the Mets' future with JD and Dom, and I've been having this conversation ever since I started this show, I feel like. 2019 was my first season hosting Locked On Mets, and we have talked about this time and again. What do you do with JD and Dom? And I've always been more pro Dom than I have been pro JD, and it's maybe just because Dom's homegrown, and so maybe I have a little bit more of an affinity for him. I don't know. Maybe just that fan side of my brain that still has a little bit of an impact on my analysis. It just enjoys Dom a little bit more than JD. Maybe that's what that is. But both of them can't play defensively in the outfield, and first base is locked up. And you look at DH, and when you have Robinson Cano next year, if there is a DH, good spot for him, especially if Javi comes back to play second. Cano might play some third, but regardless, he's going to take some time there. And you got these prospects like Mark Vientos, who certainly could warrant some DH time next year as well. So when you talk about JD specifically, I look at Vientos as a much higher upside version of what JD can be. And on tomorrow's show, I actually already talked to Aram Layton, who is the host of Locked On Prospects and also wrote that top 100 prospect list for Just Baseball. And we got into all the Mets prospects, and we talked about JD compared to Vientos. And he just sees Vientos as a player that is so much more well-rounded in his approach offensively that he has legitimate 40 home run pop, whereas JD, it's more line drives. It's not quite as sustainable when it comes to hitting home runs. It's more doubles. And I just think that there's no reason to continue this yearly exercise of going into camp and having these guys that are blocking other people and that just don't make sense for your ball club. Now, the problem is you don't want to trade low in either of these guys. And apparently, according to Mike Puma, there's a report today that in the winter, the Mets could have had Lance Lynn for JD Davis. Now, what's frustrating to me, if this is true, is I talked about a Lance Lynn for JD Davis trade dating back to the trade deadline in 2020, maybe even 2019. I mean, I was very, conscious of the possibility of the Rangers wanting JD Davis and Lance Lynn being a perfect fit to slide into the Mets rotation. He's had an amazing year with Chicago, and he's found a home with the White Sox, so good for him. But when it comes to that trade, I mean, clearly the Mets should have pulled the trigger, and apparently, according to Puma, the reason they didn't is because they were trying to find a third baseman, and they wanted Davis as an insurance plan. Well, to me, that insurance is starting to cost too much of a premium where it's not worth paying it anymore. You got to clear that space, especially with Vientos on the verge of making this roster coming into camp next year. To me, JD Davis has enough trade value that if you can get a Lance Lynn, I mean, why are you not pulling the trigger? If you look at Dom and JD, both of these guys under control for 3 more years. They're Super 2 eligible, so they'll be arbitration players from here on out, but you have them under control for 3 more seasons. I think Dom still probably has more value because I think there are teams who might have a spot at first base that will see him as a plus defender there and will look at him as a reclamation project that they can really, develop into a quality starting player. And I would not be shocked if either of these guys went on to have great careers elsewhere. But when it comes to their value right now, I think Dom's has plummeted to the point that I would hang on to him. I think that Dom going into next year, if your only plan is for him to be almost a version of what they picked up Matt Adams on a minor league contract a couple years ago for, like if you think of him as that type of a player, as someone who could start if someone goes down, but is really just your left-handed masher off the bench, and that's his role, I think that's fine. But you can't have 2 players like that. So I look at JD and I say, all right, see what you can get for him. If there's a trade out there where you can trade JD Davis and get a reliever, or if you can trade JD Davis and get some prospects, I'd go for it and clear the way, because if you are going to bring Javi Baez back, I would much prefer even a reunion with Jonathan VR where you have someone that can play multiple positions and it can do a little bit more for you than having JD Davis as a bench piece. If Baez is back, if you have Lindor, if you have Cano, you have Alonso, when you're talking about infield and DH at bats, there's just not a lot that goes around, especially with the potential of Vientos and even Brett Beatty contributing next season. So right now, going into the offseason, I would move JD Davis, but the bigger disappointment this year continues to be Dominic Smith because the stage was set for him. Again, a 166 WRC plus. He was considered a top 5 hitter in baseball based on that all-encompassing offensive metric last season. It was a shortened season, but he was very good in 2019 as well. And for whatever reason, he fell off a cliff, and that's just been very disappointing to watch. That's going to be all, though, for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thanks again for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. And we will be back tomorrow. As I said, I was joined by Aram Layton for our Friday Farm Report as we go through his top 100 prospect list and talk about Francisco Alvarez, Mark Vientos, and Brett Beatty, who all made the list, and even Ronnie Mauricio, who was a honorable mention or an exception from that list. We discuss all those prospects. And for your second listen today, why don't you check out the Locked On Bets podcast? Betting does not have to be a guessing game anymore if you listen to Locked On Bets, which is hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. Get daily picks, blowout specials, wrong team favorite picks, and Lee Sterling's lock of the day by following the Locked On Bets podcast, brought to you by BetOnline.ag, wherever you get podcasts.